The sun was setting on a crisp autumn evening as Sarah pulled up to her new rental home. A quaint two-story house with faded blue siding and a wraparound porch. It seemed perfect. Too perfect, perhaps, for the incredibly low price she'd found on Craigslist. But Sarah was desperate for a fresh start. And this charming little house on the outskirts of town promised exactly that. If only she'd known then what lurked beneath the floorboards. Sarah lugged her suitcases up the creaky wooden steps, fumbling with the key the landlord had left under the welcome mat. As the door swung open, she took in the cozy living room bathed in warm lamplight. Everything seemed normal, inviting. Even, she explored each room, mentally arranging her furniture. The kitchen needed updating, but it had good bones. Upstairs, she claimed the larger bedroom as her own. Already picturing lazy Sunday mornings curled up with a good book, it wasn't until Sarah ventured into the unfinished basement that an uneasy feeling began to creep over her. The bare concrete walls and exposed pipes were to be expected, but there in the far corner was that a door. Sarah's brow furrowed as she approached. It was a heavy steel door, completely out of place in this quaint old house. Even stranger, it appeared to be welded shut. A chill ran down her spine. What could possibly be behind there? She pushed the thought from her mind. Old houses had their quirks, after all. Sarah was probably better off not knowing what was on the other side of that door. If only she'd listened to that nagging voice in her head. The next few weeks passed in a whirl of unpacking and settling. Sarah threw herself into making the house a home, determined to ignore the sealed door in the basement. But late at night, she could swear she heard something. Faint scratching sounds. Muffled thumps. She told herself it was just the house settling. Old pipes creaking. Her imagination running wild in an unfamiliar place. Deep down, though, Sarah knew something wasn't right. It all came to a head one stormy night in October. Sarah jolted awake to a blood-curdling scream echoing through the house. Her heart pounding, she fumbled for her phone with trembling hands. Was someone breaking in? Had she imagined it? Another scream pierced the air, this time unmistakably real. And it was coming from the basement. Sarah's mind raced as she dialed 911. What horrors awaited her down there? Should she investigate herself, or wait for help to arrive? Before she could decide, heavy footsteps thundered up the basement stairs. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized someone or something was in the house with her. The 911 operator's voice crackled through the phone, but Sarah could barely hear over the sound of her own ragged breathing. She whispered her address, praying help would arrive in time. The footsteps grew closer. Sarah's eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for a weapon, an escape route, anything. Just as the bedroom door began to creak open, red and blue lights flooded through the windows. Sarah had never been so relieved to hear police sirens in her life. What happened next was a blur. Officers swarmed the house, weapons drawn. Sarah huddled in the corner of her room, shaking uncontrollably as raised voices and the sounds of a struggle drifted up from downstairs. It wasn't until hours later, wrapped in a scratchy blanket in the back of an ambulance, that Sarah learned the horrifying truth. The house she'd been living in, it used to belong to a serial killer, known as the Basement Butcher. He'd terrorized the area for years before finally being caught. The police thought they'd found all his victims. They were wrong. Behind that welded door in the basement, they'd discovered a hidden inn, and inside, a young woman, emaciated, terrified, but miraculously alive. She'd been trapped down there for over a year, even after the killer's arrest. Somehow, in all the chaos, the police had missed her. And if Sarah hadn't moved in, if she hadn't heard those screams, that poor woman might never have been found. As for the footsteps Sarah heard, it turns out the victim had finally managed to break free that night. In her confused, traumatized state, she'd been frantically searching for a way out. Sarah shuddered, realizing how close she'd come to a very different ending. If the police hadn't arrived when they did, in the days that followed, more chilling details emerged. The landlord claimed he had no idea about the house's grisly history when he bought it at auction, but investigators weren't so sure. Too many coincidences. Too many unanswered questions. As Sarah watched her dream home become a crime scene, cordoned off with yellow tape, she couldn't help but wonder. How many other houses out there held dark secrets? How many other innocent renters might be living above hidden horrors? She thought back to that Craigslist ad. The price that seemed too good to be true. All the red flags she'd ignored in her desperation for a fresh start. Sarah vowed then and there she'd never make that mistake again. And she'd do everything in her power to warn others about the dangers lurking behind seemingly normal front doors. Because you never know what or who might be waiting on the other side. As Sarah gave her statement to the detectives one last time, a chill ran down her spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that this nightmare was far from over. Little did she know, across town, another unsuspecting renter was about to stumble into a trap far deadlier than anything Sarah had faced. But that's a story for another time. If this gave you chills, you haven't seen anything yet, subscribe now and dive into the next true story on Real American Story.